The ice came without warning. It did not build slowly. 1 hour the sky above the Montana Valley was just cold and gray, and the next hour every power line within 40 miles was wearing 3 inches of frozen weight it was never meant to hold. The lines went down at 11:47 p.m. The backup grid at Site Row kicked on, ran for 8 minutes, and quit. Ray Callum was on subfloor 3 when it happened. He was lying on his back inside a wall panel, flashlight clenched between his teeth, swapping out a humidity sensor that had been reading wrong for 2 weeks. Nobody had cared about that sensor for 2 weeks. In the dark, with the facility alarm wailing somewhere 3 floors up, it felt like the least important thing in the building. He pulled himself out of the wall, sat up, and listened. He had heard the containment check alarm twice before during his 8 months at Site Row, once for a fire drill, once for a gas leak that turned out to be a busted pipe. It was not a good sound. His stomach dropped the way it always did. Ray picked up his kit bag, clipped the flashlight to his collar, and headed for the service stairwell. His plan was simple: get back to the surface, sign out, go home. He was not cleared for whatever the alarm was about. He fixed humidity sensors and ventilation filters and the occasional broken circuit panel. The stairwell door was 12 meters down the corridor. He made it 4 meters. The thing that came around the corner was not human. Ray stopped. His flashlight caught it dead on, and for a second his brain just refused. Too tall. Wrong proportions. The skin, if it was skin, had faint patterns of light running through it, pale blue and gray, shifting like the surface of deep water. Large eyes. A second set of eyelids, translucent, half shut. Limbs that bent in the right places but were a little too long. It stopped when the light hit it. They looked at each other. Ray's heart was doing something loud and unhelpful. Every reasonable part of his brain said to run, or shout, or at least back away slowly. The alarm was still going. Security was moving. There were protocols for this. He had never been told what they were, because he was not cleared, but they existed, and people who knew what they were doing were probably running them right now. He did not run. He did not shout. He stood there with the flashlight on it and noticed that it was not moving either, not lunging, not making any threatening sound. It was standing against the wall like it had run out of energy to do anything else, and the pale lights in its skin were cycling slow, tired, through blue and gray. It looked exhausted. That was the only word for it. Not dangerous, just exhausted. Ray let out a slow breath and heard his own voice before he had decided to speak. "You look terrible." The alien did not respond. It watched him. The lights in its skin slowed a little. Upstairs, the alarm was still going. Ray could hear boots now, security sweeping floors. Subfloor 1, then subfloor 2. He had maybe 3 minutes. He looked at the alien. He looked at the stairwell door. He looked back. It had slid down the wall while he was standing there thinking. Sitting on the floor now, back against the concrete, those extra eyelids drooping. The blue-gray patches had gone almost dark. Ray made a decision. Not a smart one, probably. The kind that could end a career, and possibly worse than a career, and more than a few government people with long job titles would have a lot to say about it. But the thing on the floor had not tried to hurt him. It had sat down. It had gone quiet. It was the size of a grown person, sitting on cold concrete in the dark, and it looked like it had not slept properly in years. Ray had spent his whole life being a decent person, and he could not make himself walk away from that. He crossed to the ventilation panel on the north wall, pulled it open, checked the crawl space behind it. No camera. He had checked the layout his first week, and looked back. "In here," he said low. "Come on. Now." The alien looked at the crawl space. It looked at him. Then it got up, slowly, and moved. The security team hit subfloor 3 2 minutes and 40 seconds later. Ray was standing in the corridor with his kit bag, his work order pulled up on his phone screen, and the mildly irritated look of a man who had been interrupted during a job he was already behind on. They asked a few questions. He answered them without lying. He had been in the wall panel. The alarm had surprised him. He had not seen anything. They moved on. Ray waited until their boots faded up the stairwell. Then he turned back to the ventilation panel and knocked twice. Inside the crawl space, something knocked back. The crawl space smelled like old metal and dry concrete. Ray squeezed in after the alien and pulled the panel shut. It was not a comfortable space. Knees drawn up, back curved, the flashlight making everything look harsher than it needed to. The alien was folded into the far corner, long limbs tucked close, watching him. Up close, it looked worse than it had in the corridor. The skin. He kept thinking of it as skin, even though it was something else, something that moved with light, was dull, like a phone screen on the lowest setting. The patches on its forearms and neck had been cycling blue-gray before. Now they were almost nothing, just dim suggestions of color. It had a lean, worn look that did not come from one bad night. It came from a very long time of not getting enough of anything. Ray set his kit bag between them and unzipped it. Thermos of instant noodle soup. Water bottle. Half a granola bar that had been slightly crushed since Tuesday. He looked at all of it, then at the alien, and made a quiet decision about what mattered most right now. He held out the water bottle. The alien did not move for several seconds. It watched the bottle. It watched his hand. Then, carefully, the way you move when you have been caught off guard by things that looked safe before, it reached out and took the bottle. It drank the entire thing without stopping. Ray said nothing. He unscrewed the thermos lid and slid it across the floor. The alien looked at the soup. Something shifted in the dim patches on its neck, a faint flicker of a color he could not quite name. Not quite gold, not quite yellow. Something between the two. It drank the soup too. They sat in the crawl space and said nothing for a while. Ray could hear security moving through the floors above. He was not worried about it yet. His work order was real, his presence documented. The only thing not documented was the alien behind the ventilation panel, and the facility did not know where to look for that. His earpiece crackled. Standard facility issue, short-range comms for maintenance staff. He had forgotten it was in. It stayed quiet for a moment. Then a soft, automated tone came through, and text scrolled across the tiny side display. Varic language assist, passive mode active. He blinked, pulled it out, looked at it. He had never seen that screen before. He had not known the earpiece could do that. He put it back in. The alien spoke. Not loud, not aggressive. A series of low tonal sounds, some almost musical, some click-edged, and the earpiece took about 3 seconds to catch up. Translation: why did you not alert them? Not a question, just a flat statement of something it genuinely did not understand. Ray thought about it. He did not want to be dramatic about it. He wanted to give it an honest answer. You sat down, he said. People about to do something bad don't sit down first. The alien was quiet. The earpiece went silent for a long stretch. Then the dim patches on its neck flickered, that between color again, brief. Translation: that is a strange reason. Maybe, Ray said. It's what I've got. He leaned back against the wall. The concrete was cold through his jacket. He was tired in a way that had nothing to do with the time. A deeper kind of tired, the sort that had been building since before he even took this job. He thought about the divorce, about the drive out here, how he had taken the posting at Site Row mainly because it was far from everything he had been trying not to think about. He had not expected this. Do you have a name? He asked. The alien looked at him. The earpiece caught whatever it said. Translation: I was called Noor. Before. Ray noticed that word. Before. Not my name is. Before. I'm Ray, he said. Noor did not respond to that. It looked down at the empty thermos, and something moved across its face, or what functioned as a face, that Ray could not read exactly, but felt anyway. The way you can tell, even with a stranger, when they are remembering something they would rather not. He did not push. He sat with it. The alarm upstairs had gone quiet. After a while, Noor turned and looked at the ventilation panel, then back at Ray. Translation: they will find me again. Yeah, Ray said. Probably. Translation: then why? Ray rubbed the back of his neck. He looked at the crushed granola bar in his kit bag. Because right now they haven't, he said. And you were hungry. Noor's patches held that between color for a long time. Ray did not know what it meant. He thought it was probably as close to warmth as those patches got, and he decided not to ask and just let it sit there in the dark between them. Outside, the ice storm kept coming down. Ray did not sleep that night. He sat in the crawl space while the facility settled into the quiet of early morning. Ventilation hum, the occasional footstep overhead, nothing urgent. Noor slept, or did something that looked like it. Its patches went dark and its breathing stretched out into long, slow intervals. Ray watched it and worked through the problem. The morning shift came in at 6. He had maybe 40 minutes before someone would come down to subfloor 3 for the equipment check. He needed help. Not security help. A different kind. 3 months ago, he had been fixing a ceiling panel outside the program director's office and caught maybe a minute of an argument through the door. Dr. Sarah Okafor had been calm in the way people get when they are no longer angry, just finished. He had not known what the argument was about and had kept moving. He knew now that it mattered. He woke, nor with a quiet knock on the floor. It came alert fast. He held up a hand, pointed at the panel, held up 2 fingers, pointed at himself, pointed away. Nor watched him, then gave a single slow nod. He found Sarah in her office at 5:41 a.m. with cold tea and 3 files open on her screen. She looked like she had not slept either. She looked up when he knocked on the door frame and waited. "I found something in subfloor 3, Ray said. He kept his voice even. Something that needed water. I gave it water. Now I need someone who knows what they're doing." Sarah looked at him for a moment. Then she closed all 3 files. "Show me." She was the one who talked to Noor properly. Ray stood back and watched her crouch at the crawlspace entrance and start a conversation in sounds he could not follow. Fluid and tonal, nothing like any language he had encountered. Noor's patches came on. Not bright, but on. The conversation went a long time. Ray sat against the corridor wall. At one point, Sarah looked back at him with an expression he could not read, and then turned away and kept going. When she finally came out and stood up, her face was tight. 6 years, she said. Ray said nothing. 2 years sedated. Tests. Then 2 years awake, but isolated. No Varrock contact, no sunlight, restricted diet. The last 2 years have been worse. She stopped. The director has been trying to leverage Noor. Use it to get something from the Varrock government in exchange for its return. Ray thought about that for a second. Did the Varrock know it was alive? No. Her voice was flat. The ship's emergency beacon was suppressed before it could reach anyone. They have been assuming Noor was dead. Ray looked at the ventilation panel. What does the director do when he finds out it got loose last night? Sarah did not answer. He went back into the crawlspace. Noor was sitting with its back against the far wall, patches of flat, dark gray. Not the cycling gray of fear from the night before. Something slower. Something that had just been gray for a very long time. Ray sat across from it. "She told you what Noor said?" he asked. "Yes," Sarah said from the entrance. He looked at Noor directly. He had no idea if it would understand him without the translation. He said it anyway. That's not how you treat someone. He did not look at the earpiece display. He watched Noor's patches. They shifted. One small area on its left forearm caught that between color, not quite gold, and held it for just a moment. Then it went gray again. Sarah crouched beside him and spoke to Noor again, softer. Noor answered in short, tired bursts. Ray caught fragments on the earpiece display. Home. Years. No reason. That last one sat on the display longer than the others, like the translator had hesitated over it. No reason. He did not need the translation for that one. He knew what it looked like. The decision to keep going, not because things were going to get better, but because stopping would mean letting the people who built the cell have exactly what they wanted. He had touched something like that once. Nothing close to this bad, but close enough to recognize the shape. Sarah put her hand near Noor's shoulder, not touching, just close. "I have files," she said, talking to Ray now. 2 years of formal requests. Documented treatment conditions. I kept copies off-site. When this goes where I think it's going this morning, those files have to matter. When does this morning start? Ray asked. The director gets in at 7. The night security log will flag subfloor 3. He reads those before he sits down. Ray nodded. Outside, through concrete and packed snow, the Montana morning was just starting. Gray light. Nobody awake who did not have to be. Inside the crawl space, Noor sat in the dark and waited for what it already knew was coming. So did Ray. Director Harold Voss read the night security log at 7:08 a.m. He was still in his coat. He came to Sarah's office with 2 security officers and a face that had already worked everything out. Voss moved through problems by getting ahead of them. He had done it his entire career. He was not loud. He was the one who had already counted the exits before anyone else noticed there was a door. Noor was sitting against the wall of Sarah's office. Sarah had moved it there an hour earlier. She was done having this conversation in a maintenance corridor. Ray was there too. He had not been asked to leave and had not volunteered to go. Voss looked at Noor for a moment, not surprised, just measuring. Then he looked at Sarah. Standard containment procedure, he said. We move it back, document the breach, adjust cell security. No, Sarah said. Voss looked at her the way you look at a fire alarm going off in a building you own. Annoying. Fixable. Dr. Okafor. 7 formal requests: Herald, diet, light exposure, basic cognitive stimulation. Everyone denied or buried. I have copies. I have your responses. She reached into the folder on her desk and placed a stack of papers between them. I also have a record of the Varek distress beacon this facility intercepted 6 years ago and never reported. The room went quiet in a specific way. Voss looked at the papers. He did not touch them. You're a technician, he said, turning to Ray. You're not cleared for any part of this. Do you understand your position right now? Ray had been near the window. He had been watching the snow outside and waiting to see if this was the moment where he needed to say something. It was. I found someone on the floor who needed water, Ray said. That's not a clearance issue. That's just a person needing water. Voss gave him the patient look of a man who had handled many inconvenient people before. Then Nur stood up. No drama. No slow rise for effect. It just stood, the way someone stands when they have made a decision. Its patches were dark. When it spoke, it was not the tonal Varek language Sarah had been using all morning. It was English. Rough. Edges in wrong places. But English. Clear enough that everyone in the room caught every word. I do not wish to be your problem, Nur said. I wish to go home. Nobody spoke. Voss stared. For the first time since he walked in, his face showed something other than control. Not fear, not guilt, just the expression of a man who has had a quiet assumption yanked out from under him. Sarah found her voice first. She asked, softly, How long have you been able to do that? Nur looked at her. Since year 2, it said. There was no reason to speak to people who did not see me. That sentence did not fill the room. It emptied it. Ray felt it land in his chest, not hard, but slow and cold. The way a thing settles when it has been true for a long time, and you are only now hearing it said out loud. 6 years. 6 years of sitting in a cell, learning the language of the people keeping it there, and saying nothing. Not because it could not. Because no one had treated it like it was worth addressing. Until a maintenance technician said you looked terrible and meant it kindly. One security officer shifted his weight. The other was looking at a specific point on the floor. Voss had gone still. I'm making a call, Voss said. His voice was controlled but thinner than when he walked in. This goes up the chain. Out of my hands. Make it, Sarah said. Voss stepped into the corridor with his phone. The 2 officers stayed, but the certainty had gone out of them. Ray did not blame them. He was not certain about most things either. But he walked across the room and sat down on the floor next to Nur. Not as a statement. Not to make a point in front of anyone. Just because Nur was on the floor again, and that was not something it should do alone. Nur's patches came on. That color, the between gold, the one that was not quite warmth and not quite something else, the one he had never found the right word for. It spread from the forearm patches up to the neck and held there. Steady, not flickering the way it had in the crawl space. Steady. Ray looked up at Sarah. She was watching Nur with the look of someone who had been fighting a long fight and had just seen, for the first time in a while, something that looked like it might actually land. She gave a single nod. In the corridor, Voss's voice was low and careful and working hard to sound like it was still in charge of something. Ray leaned against the wall and waited. They suspended Ray the same afternoon. Pending review. Stay in the area. Do not contact facility personnel. Cooperate fully with any inquiry. He drove to the nearest motel, 8 miles from Site Row, and checked in under his own name because he had nothing to hide and was too tired to be clever. The room had a heating unit that ticked and a window facing a gas station. He sat on the edge of the bed and thought about whether he regretted any of it. He did not. That surprised him. He had expected doubt to set in once the adrenaline cleared. But when he went back through the night, the crawl space, the water bottle, the floor of Sarah's office while Voss made his call, there was nothing he would have changed. He got food from the gas station. He slept better than he had in months. He did not know what was happening back at the facility. Sarah knew. She had been placed on administrative leave the same day, her access card killed, her files flagged for review. What the reviewers did not know was that she had already moved the most important copies 3 weeks earlier, not because she saw this exact situation coming, but because she had known something like it was coming eventually. She had sent files to 3 places. The first was a UN Xeno Relations Oversight body she had been quietly corresponding with for 8 months. They had been trying to trace what happened to a Varek vessel that went dark near Earth 6 years ago. The second was a journalist with a record of handling classified science stories without burning his sources. She had never met him in person but trusted his work. The third was a Varric diplomatic liaison named Driss, operating out of a small Geneva office that most levels of most governments did not know existed. Driss had spent 4 years trying to find Nor through channels that kept getting quietly shut down before they went anywhere. Driss moved first. 41 hours after Voss's call went up the chain, a Varric diplomatic vessel entered Earth orbit. Small, non-military, the kind used for situations that needed calm and privacy rather than a show of anything. The message it sent was not addressed to any government body, not to Site Row or the program. It came through the UN body's channel, and it was addressed to a description. The human who sat on the floor. Ray found out on the morning of the third day when a government liaison knocked on his motel room door and told him he was needed back at the facility. They asked for you specifically, the liaison said. Young man, good coat, looked like he had not expected this assignment. We don't fully understand why. Ray pulled on his jacket, the old one, worn at the left cuff, the one he wore every shift. He had not packed a better jacket. It had not occurred to him. I understand why, he said. He drove back in his own car. The ice storm snow was mostly gone, just gray slush at the road edges. Site Row looked the same as always. Low buildings, chain fence, designed to not be noticed from the road. He had worked there 8 months and had never thought much about what went on in the parts he was not cleared for. He thought about it now. Nor had been moved to a different room. The liaison called it an improved holding space. It had a window and actual food. It was still a room Nor could not leave. Sarah had been brought back before Ray. Suspension dropped quietly. Documentation returned. No explanation offered for either. Ray was escorted to a conference room with a table, chairs, and a proper translation unit on the wall. Sarah was already there. Tired but steady. She gave him a small nod. Across the table was Nor. It watched him walk in. Its patches were dim but not dark. That low, steady between gold, holding like a candle in a room with no draft. Next to Nor sat Driss. Older, wider across the shoulders. Patches moving in a slow, calm rhythm. A formal strip of fabric crossed one arm, the closest thing the Varric had to a flag. Sarah had mentioned once in a different context. Driss looked at Ray for a long time before speaking. The translation unit gave it in flat, careful English. You are the one. Ray sat down. I'm the one who had soup in his bag. Instant noodles. I want to be honest about that. Sarah made a small sound that might have been a laugh. Nor's patches moved. Driss tilted its head. The translation unit flagged it quietly. Acceptance with warmth. Then, Driss said, we will begin. Driss spoke for a long time. The diplomatic vessel in orbit had been searching for Nor for years. Not openly. The Varric had been careful with Earth. Young world, they said, one that moved fast, and sometimes badly. They had been watching, assessing, waiting to see which direction things would fall. Then a signal arrived through a back channel. Files. 2 years of formal requests. A suppressed beacon. Records that could not be explained away. And a description of a human who had sat on a cold concrete floor in the middle of the night and given a starving alien his dinner without being asked. We have made contact with 41 species, Driss said through the translation unit. We have never found a civilization that responds to fear with automatic hostility. Most species, when frightened, make bad decisions. Yours makes spectacular ones. In both directions. Ray was not sure whether that was a compliment or a caution. Probably both. Driss turned and spoke to Nor and Varric. Nor answered. Ray watched the patches on its arms. More color now. More movement than he had seen across all the hours in the crawl space in Sarah's office. Like something that had been held very still for a long time and had finally been given permission to move. Sarah translated for Ray quietly, close to his ear. Nor was telling Driss about the night of the ice storm. About a door that had opened. About walking a corridor on legs that had not gone further than 8 meters in 6 years. About a human with a flashlight who said you looked terrible in a tone that had nothing threatening in it. About sitting on a floor in the dark with a thermos of soup. Nor said, the hardest part of those years was not the tests. Not the isolation. It was the decision in year 3 to accept that no one was coming. That was the thing that cost the most to survive. Not the conditions. The belief. And then a stranger sat down next to it and offered water. I have thought about that moment, Nurse said, in English directly to Ray. When I am old and telling stories, that will be in them. Not this room. Not the ship outside. The floor. Ray did not have anything adequate to say to that. He said, I'm glad you're going home. Noor's patches went full gold. Not the dim between color from the crawl space. Not the careful flicker in Sarah's office. Full, warm gold. Forearms, neck, along its jaw, steady and bright. And the translation unit made a soft sound and showed text he had not seen before. Varek emotional state. No direct human equivalent. Closest approximation. Gratitude that has changed the person feeling it permanently. Ray looked at those words for a moment. Then at Noor. Yeah, he said quietly. Me too. Noor was released that afternoon. No ceremony. No press. A decision that moved through several levels of government with unusual speed, helped along by Driss's quiet presence and Sarah's documentation, and the straightforward fact that nobody at any of those levels wanted to be the one to refuse a Varek diplomatic request in writing. Voss was not there. Ray did not ask where he was. The Montana air outside was cold and clean after the storm. Late morning sky, pale blue. Ray and Sarah stood in the facility parking lot, while Noor was escorted to a transport headed for a landing site 20 miles north. Before it got in, Noor stopped and turned back. You will lose your job here, it said. Already lost it, Ray said. Will you be all right? Ray thought about that honestly. Small amount of savings. Good at fixing things. A sister in Idaho who had been saying for 2 years to come be closer to actual people. Yeah, he said. I'll be all right. Noor held his eyes for a moment. Patches of soft, warm gold. Then it got in and was gone. 3 months later, Ray was doing maintenance at a middle school in Billings. The boiler was older than most of the teachers. The gymnasium lights had been flickering since before he arrived. He was behind on a water pump replacement that had been on the list for weeks. A package showed up on a Tuesday. No return address. Small box. Inside was a flat stone, smooth, palm-sized, dark gray. It pulsed with a slow bioluminescent glow, warm, even, like a very calm heartbeat. There was a note. So you do not forget that sitting down was the right thing. Ray read it twice. He set the stone on the windowsill. In daylight, you could barely see the glow. At night, when the room was dark, it was the first thing visible. Quiet and steady. Not trying to be anything more than it was. He went back to work. The boiler was not going to fix itself.